It is FIFA season, and for those of us who are book girlies, that means it is Read Around the World Challenge season. And for me, because I tried the Read Around the World Challenge before, and there are around like 190 countries in the world, it was a bit too intimidating. So I was like, a way to dip my little toe in, a way to like kind of start my Read Around the World Challenge is to start with the countries in the World Cup. And it's exciting because like some of the underdogs, some of the countries I've never heard before, they're acting out. They're showing up. Like they're being big dogs. Like Cabo Verde, Curacao. So I was like, yo, yeah, this is a banger way. I don't know why I'm talking like I'm from Toronto. This is a banger way. And I said it again. This is a great way to start my Read Around the World Challenge. So this video is basically a TBR slash book recommendations slash account of how many countries in the World Cup I've read books from. So I guess let's get started. The first country on my list is Mexico, and this is a country I've actually read a book from. That book is The House on Mango Street, but I actually didn't love that book enough to be like, I would recommend it to someone else. So I'm adding a book from this country to my Read Around the World Challenge TBR list, and that book is Mexican Gothic. So I've never read the book, obviously that's why it's going on my TBR. But when I was like looking for books from Mexico that I thought could be interesting, this book came up on basically every list, and it's a Goodreads Choice Award winner for a favorite horror novel. Let me read you the synopsis. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom, Naomi heads to a high palace, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. She's not sure what she will find. Her cousin's husband, a handsome Englishman, is a stranger, and Naomi knows very little about the region. Naomi is also an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, and her chic gowns and perfect red lipsticks are more suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough and smart with an indomitable, and I say I like to read. Look at me, I can't even speak English. With an indomitable will, and she's not afraid, not of her cousin's new husband, who is both menacing and alluring. Ooh. Not of his father, the ancient patriarch, who seems to be fascinated by Naomi, and not even by the house itself, which begins to invade Naomi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. It's kind of giving The Shining a bit, except, with a hot debutante chick. So yeah, when I read that synopsis, I was like, yo, this could be a banger. So I added it to my Read Around the World Challenge TBR. The next country is South Africa. This is also not a country I've ever read a book from, but the book I'm adding to my TBR is Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood. This book, it was super popular at a time because when Trevor Noah was hosting, I think The Late Show or The Daily Show or whatever he was hosting, I think he was the only black late night host. So like immediately I was rooting for him. And I liked his comedy. Like he used to do a lot of funny stand-ups. So I was like, immediately released the book. It was popular. I wanted to read it. I never got around to reading it. So I was like, that's my pick from South Africa. South Korea. This is the first country that I've actually read a book from on this list. And that book is Pachinko. It is amazing. It is it's mainly the story of a little girl's life as she grows older, becomes a wife, becomes a mother. She was born in Korea during the time where I think Japan was colonizing Korea. So she leaves Korea to go to Japan, and she experiences racism in Japan. We look at how racism shapes her generation and also her children's generation and the choices they can make and the work they can have. It's just one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. So yeah, if you want to read a book from South Korea, I would highly recommend Pachinko. The next book on this list is Czechia, and I've never read a book from Czechia. So the book I'm adding to my TBR is The Unbearable Lightness of Being. The reason I chose this book is because of this specific sentence in the synopsis. Mila Kundra tells the story of a young woman in love with a man torn between his love for her and his incorrigible womanizing. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? You're like, I'm deeply in love with you, but in my bones, I have to be a womanizer. I was like, I'm sad. I am I am sad. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that read from Czechia. The next country on this list is Switzerland, and I have read a book from Switzerland, and it is my recommendation to you, and that is Heidi. It is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. I read it as a child. It is a children's book, but it is so beautiful. It's about this like little orphan girl whose aunt leaves her in the Swiss Alps with her grandfather, and then the aunt comes back again to like take her back to the city so that she can be like the best friend of this rich family whose daughter is sick. And so she's like the sick daughter's companion. And okay, it sounds like a heavy book, but it's not. It is like about how beautiful and healing nature can be. It's about how beautiful family can be. The grandfather is like such a grump, but like obviously he falls in love with Haiti because she's such a sweet little girl. There's a grandmother. There's goats in the Swiss Alps. It's such a beautiful book. Every single thing about it is beautiful. Read it, read it. Or if you're not like into children's, like just read it. Just read it. The next country on this list is Canada, my country, the country I'm currently in right now, the country I'm wearing red for to rep. And my recommendation from Canada is Anne of Green Gables. It's actually a series. I feel like most people don't know this, but I've read a lot of it. I think I've read Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Windley Poplars. I've read some here and there, but the one I think you should read, even if you don't read the rest of the series, is Anne of Green Gables. It is such a beautiful book. It's about this orphan girl. I know. I seem to love books about orphan girls. It's about this orphan girl who gets adopted by like a brother and sister in PEI, and she's just of such high spirits. She has such a strong imagination. She has a temper. I feel like if you, I don't know if even if you haven't read Anne of Green Gables, you probably know about Anne and Gilbert and how like he was like a little 12-year-old boy trying to flirt with her, and he called her carrots, and she like broke her slate over his head. It's so beautiful. Just read it. Just read it. That's my recommendation from Canada. But I did add a book to my TBR to be read from Canada, and that's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Ordinarily, when I heard the name, I thought it would just be like a, a fictional anatomy book of fairies. Like someone would just draw like different types of fairies and like explain their anatomy. And I was like, that does not seem interesting at all. But I saw a booktuber. I think it's like Newly Nova. I can't remember her name, but I watch a lot of her videos, and like I trust her recommendations. And she was like, "This book is a banger." She said that like it has a genius, like the female is like a genius scientist, and then the guy is like a rich guy, and he's kind of bratty, but he's not like maliciously bratty. And I was like, yes, I'm sad for like rich people that aren't evil. And the book won like a good Goodreads Choice Awards. So I was like, maybe it is a good book. Maybe I judged it way too quickly the first time. So yeah, it's on my TBR. The next country is Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that book that I'm adding to my TBR is The Cellist of Sarajevo. And apparently it's based on a real life cellist. And the cellist did not appreciate being made into a book. But the synopsis is pretty banger. So basically, it's about this cellist who sees like 20 people get bombed in line for soup, for like bread, and then he vows to like sit in that same hollow where the mortar landed and like play a reconstructed piece for every day for each of the 22 victims that like passed. And it's apparently just like a moving story of like survival in a war torn environment, and about like the human ability to rebuild after devastation. And it sounds beautiful. Another book I'm adding from the same country is The Cat I Never Named, a true story of love, war, and survival, mainly because the cover is super cute and because Let me just read you the tagline, the selling line. The stunning memoir of a Muslim teen struggling to survive the Bosnian genocide and the stray cat who protected her family through it all. You're telling me it's a book where a cat is one of the main characters and I'm not going to read it? You're telling me it's a story about surviving a genocide, of a story of human resistance, a story that centers a teenage girl, and I'm not going to read it? Do you even know me? Like, it's beautiful. I'm excited. The next country is Qatar, and the book I'm adding to my TBR is The Corsair. Now, Qatar was kind of a really difficult country for me to find a book from because they speak, I think, Arabic predominantly. So it's really hard for me to find a book that's popular there that has been translated into English. If you have recommendations, drop them for me. But the one I found that I thought would be interesting is The Corsair. I think it's going to be quite similar to The Wager. The tagline that really, I think, captured my interest is this story of high seas piracy and political intrigue, of unexpected kinship and personal betrayal, portrays the conflicting interests and human drama of this historic events in the Arabian Peninsula. So yeah, it's going to be about piracy. It's going to be about ships. It's going to be about betrayal. It's going to be a banger. And I think it's going to be a bit like The Wager. So I'm super excited for that. The next country is Brazil, and the book I'm adding to my TBR is Dom Casumoro. Let me read you the tagline that had me sad. The story unravels through the unreliable narration of Bento Santiago, a man obsessed with the idea that his wife, Capitu, betrayed him. Unreliable narrator? Unreliable narrator, I am sad. And also being convinced that your wife cheated when, like, who knows if she did or didn't? Like, paranoia. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like it's going to give everything that needs to be given. And I'm like, I am sad. The next country on my list is Morocco. And the book I chose is In the Country of Others. The tagline that I think like sold me on it is this book is a passionate interracial love story between a Moroccan soldier who fought for France in the World War II and a French woman whose fierce desire for autonomy parallels colonial Morocco's fight for independence. So it's like interracial love story in Morocco between a Moroccan man and a French woman as Morocco is in the process of fighting for their independence from France. Like, literally, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like it will give everything that needs to be given, like how complex the relationship would be. Like, there's still the colonized dynamic in the context of just a single relationship, and also having them like have conflicting loyalties. Like, you're a Moroccan soldier, you fought for France, and now like Morocco is fighting for independence against France. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like it would be like I feel like it's going to be a relationship that encapsulates the entire nation's struggle. And I'm sad. So the next country is Scotland, and I have read a couple books from Scotland. The book I've read, that is a big B. Oh my god, it's like this big, like from here to here. It's so big. I would show you, but like I don't want to like move too much and it like eat me. So the next country, Scotland. I have read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I have read Treasure Island. So yes, when I was a child, I was reading around the world apparently, and then I got older and was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just kidding. So the book I would recommend from Scotland that I have read is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. No words can describe this book. This book is the closest to perfection I've ever experienced as a reader. And like, it's told through, I feel like it's even a spoiler to say this, but like it's told through a genuinely unreliable narrator. Ooh, that was a bug. Our main character, Eleanor Oliphant, is genuinely an unreliable narrator, and she's dealing with life post a very traumatic childhood with like an abusive mother. And so you're seeing that like unravel, but you're also seeing her deal with existing in a work situation or a work environment where people are quite mean, quite unkind to her. And it's just, I don't even know. It has everything, and it is one of the closest things to perfect I feel like you will ever experience as a reader. So just pick it up. So the next country is USA, and I've read so many books from USA. I can't even begin to name them. But the book I would recommend that you read from the USA is, it's actually a series. It's a trilogy. It's the Chaos Walking series. I've rated all of them 5 stars. It's The Knife of Never Letting Go, Monsters of Men, and The Ask and the Answer. So in this book, this boy, he is like a pioneer, and they've gone. He's human, but they've like colonized a new planet, I guess. And in his town, and I guess in the world as he knows it, there are no women. There are no women. But you can read the mind of every man. And so he goes on this amazing adventure to kind of understand his world a little better, understand why there are no women, and deal with the consequences of that. It has everything. It literally has everything. Every time I say a word, I'm scared that I'm going to give you a spoiler. It wouldn't ruin the book because the book is amazing and unruinable, but I just don't want to like at all the like reduce your experience of it. So please, please, please just read it. The next country is Australia, and I've also read a book from Australia. The book I've read from Australia is The Mystery of a Handsome Cab. It's not the book I'm recommending. Rather than recommend The Mystery of a Handsome Cab to you, I just added a book to my TBR from Australia, and the book I added is The Book Thief. It's actually my one of my closest friends' favorite books. And let me read you the synopsis. Here is a small fact. You are going to die. 1939, Nazi Germany. The country is holding its breath. Death has never been busier. Liesel, a 9-year-old girl, is living with her foster family on Heimel Street. Her parents have been taken away to a concentration camp. Liesel steals books. This is her story, and the story of the inhabitants of her streets when the bombs begin to fall. Some more important information. This novel is narrated by Death. It's a small story about a girl, an accordionist, some fanatical Germans, a Jewish fist fighter, and quite a lot of thievery. Another thing you should know, Death will visit the book thief 3 times. Like, is that not a banger synopsis? I've never read it because it seems like it will be sad, but it also seems like if I'm going to actively try to read a book, I should read from Australia by an Australian author. I should read this book. The next country is Turkey, and I've never read a book from Turkey, so I added one to my TBR, and that is Madonna in a Fur Coat. So, the synopsis is that a shy young man leaves his home in rural Turkey to learn a trade in 1920s Berlin. The city's crowded streets, thriving art scene, passionate politics, and seedy cabarets provide a perfect backdrop for a chance meeting with a woman, which will haunt him for the rest of his life. Like, literally, tell me all of those words didn't stir up something in you. So, I'm excited to read that book. And then the next country I have on this list is Germany. I have read a couple books from Germany. The one I remember reading right now is is Midjamen. I know I've read a lot of books from Germany because I took a class in my last year of university called Germany and the Global Imaginary. So I have read a bunch of books from Germany, but a lot of them were like nonfiction and honestly not the most entertaining books because I was reading them for like school purposes. So I did just decide to add a book to my TBR, and that book is Mona Caston's Begin Again. Now, this is like a romance book, it's a new adult romance book. And when I was doing my research, I actually found out that like new adult is like growing in Germany as a genre. This table I'm sitting at, like bees have a house in it, so it's incredibly dangerous and low-key scary. Moving on. Okay, so one thing about Begin Again, Even though it's my book from Germany because it's written by a German author, it is actually set in Oregon in America. So, but the plot is basically like a college romance. It's about a college girl where she like moves to college and doesn't have an apartment. So she kind of like she's desperate, and then she finds an apartment and she gets to share it with who? If any, not anyone else but the college bad boy. I'm excited for this one because if you don't know, you should know that like most of the books I read are romance. I love like really careful, really carefree, just like two people falling in love, being happy. And I was like, yes, if I don't add like a simple romance to this list, I'm lying to myself. The next country is Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire. And the book I chose is Aya. It's like uh I can't remember what you call it, but it's basically like a comic book or comic strips. I've been getting into reading comic strips that aren't like superhero books or like aren't only targeted towards kids. So when I saw this, I was like excited. And also when I went on like Reddit looking for contemporary book recs from Cote d'Ivoire, this book popped up so much. So I was like, yes, I'm sad. And basically, it tells the story of like a 19-year-old heroine? Oh, oops. Oops. It tells the story of a 19-year-old heroine and like her friend group and their meddling relatives and neighbors, and just like the pleasures and troubles of everyday life in Yope City. And one of the lines in the synopsis that made me add it to my list is like, at night, an empty table in the market square under the stars is all the privacy young lovers can hope for. And what happens there is soon everybody's business. I was like, yes, yes, I'm so sad for this. The next country is Ecuador, and the book I'm adding to my TBR is Kiss the Girl. It is again a romance. It's basically the story of a girl that falls in love with like the lead singer of a popular band. But the thing is like the girl that falls in love with the lead singer, she herself is a super popular, super famous girl, and he doesn't know. So it's like I guess two famous people falling in love and just like the hijinks they get up to. And I was like, I love romance. Like love is in the air, and I like I'm breathing it in. The next country is near and dear to my heart, and I just heard about it this World Cup. And that country is Curacao. And you would never guess, but I've read a book from Curacao before. I didn't even know about this country like until the World Cup started. So when I found out that I had read a book from this country, I was like, yay, 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 yay. Like hot girls read around the world. The book I've read is called The K. I don't know if I'm recommending it to you just because I'm proud that I've already read a book from Curacao or because I loved the book, because I read the book like at least 10 years ago. Like I genuinely don't remember the plot, but I do remember feeling good when I was reading it. So because of that and because I've read a book from Curacao, I'm recommending The K. The main character is a little boy named Philip, and he's super excited when the Germans invade a little island called Curacao because like he wants to see the bombing. Like he wants to see the warplanes and see it all because he's like super excited. And his mother has also always told him like not to trust like black people because black people are different and bad people are whatever. But then I guess his plane crashes while his plane that he's on crashes and he ends up like blind and dependent on an old black man. And you just kind of see their experience and their journeys as like castaways dependent on each other. And yeah, it was okay. I think I enjoyed reading the book, but more than anything I just wanted to say I've read a book from Curacao. The next country is the Netherlands, and this book, I'm surprised it's from the Netherlands. I thought it would be from Germany, but I've started to realize that every time I think like a book is from Germany, it's not. And that book is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I feel like the title really explains everything. One thing I want to say is like when I was deciding on picking these books, I was reading these reviews and then I read like the 1-star reviews of these books. And if you want to like amuse yourself, go read 1-star reviews of like true stories and true account books because some of the reviews were like, it seems unrealistic. I feel like she's lying. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what? So yeah, and then the next country is a country that like I'm surprised that I've read so many books from this country, and that country is Japan. The books I've read, none of them I liked enough to like want to recommend, so I just added another book to my TBR. But here are the books I've read from Japan. I've read Tales from the Cafe, part of the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. I read Mushashi, which I DNF'd at like 50%, or like who knows, maybe more. I've read Memoirs of a Geisha, and I've read Tokyo Ever After. The book I'm adding to my TBR for Japan is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. I'm adding this book to my TBR mainly because of the author, because I think RM has read Haruki Murakami, and that booktuber, like Jack Edwards, he was talking about like Haruki Murakami, and I think he called him one of his favorite authors, or it's possible he said that he hated him. I can't remember, but he said something about like Haruki Murakami, I think, being goaded, and he also said that Haruki Murakami writes about women in like a very strange, very probably I think derogatory way. But anyway, like because of like the dialogue around the author, I was like, if I'm going to read another book from Japan, let me read about a book from like an author who I've heard so much conversation about. And so I picked Norwegian Wood. The next country is Sweden, and I've read a book from Sweden, and that is A Man Called Oof and Anxious People. I love this author, Frederick Backman. I think you should read A Man Called Ove. I think you should read Anxious People. It's just read any of those two books. The author, banger, genius. Top 10 authors. Top 10, top 10. The next country I have on this list is Tunisia. The book I'm adding to my TBR from Tunisia is A Calamity of Noble Houses. Let me read you the part of the synopsis that I found interesting. It's one terrible night in December 1935, the destiny of both houses changed forever when Zabia al-Rasa, the young wife of Mohsen Enafeh, is accused of having a clandestine love affair with Taha Haddad, an intellectual of humble origins known for his union activism and support of women's rights. The events of that fateful night are told by 11 different narrators, members of the two families who recall them in different historical moments, from 1940s to the present day. The result is a mosaic of secrets, memories, accusations, regrets, and emotions, taking the reader on an exciting journey through the stories of individuals caught up in the upheavals of history. It seems interesting, and affairs. Like I feel like this is a pattern you're noticing about me where it's like anything that comes with like affairs, somebody's accused of cheating on their marriage, I'm like, sit, let me hear, like spill the tea, let me hear the gossip. The next country is Belgium, and this book is again another comic. I feel like you're either gonna be super surprised about this book or you're gonna be like, yeah, that makes the most sense. And that's Tintin in Tibet. And I chose this book because like when I looked on Goodreads, when I went on Reddit looking for recommendations from books from Belgium, everyone was like, read a Tintin book. It's iconic. And people were also like, comics are like a huge part of Belgium's like artistic history or artistic identity. So they were like, yeah, read a Tintin book. So I chose Tintin in Tibet because somebody on Reddit said it was their favorite Tintin book. The next country is Egypt, and the book I chose is The Map of Love. So the synopsis of this book is basically that at the end of the 20th century, two women fall in love with men outside their familiar worlds. In 1901, Anna Winterbourne, recently widowed, leaves England for Egypt, an outpost of the empire ruling with nationalist sentiment. Far from the comfort of the British colony, she finds herself enraptured by the real Egypt and in love with Sharif Pasha al Baroudi. Nearly 100 years later, Isabel Parkman, a divorced American journalist and descendant of Anna and Sharif, has fallen in love with Omar al Gamrawi, a gifted and difficult Egyptian American conductor with his own passionate politics. In an attempt to understand her conflicting emotions and to discover the truth behind her heritage, Isabel, too, travels to Egypt and enlists Omar's sister's help in unraveling the story of Anna and Sharif's love. I'm not a love story girly at heart. I love stories that center love because I think it's so interesting seeing people show their deepest emotions, show how like their deepest emotions moves them and shapes their actions. And like I looked for stories that I felt like love was going to be centered in one way or another because I feel like that's something that everyone can relate to or have at least a mild interest in. So yeah, that's my pick from Egypt. From Iran, I've read a book from Iran, and that book is Persepolis. It is like, again, I call it a comic. I don't know if there's like a different, more appropriate word for it. That's what I meant by there's a better word for it. It's a graphic novel. And it's a story of like a teenage girl growing up in war-torn Iran. And it's beautiful because like she's still a teenage girl, so she's worried about fashion and like about the jeans she can wear. And at the same time, she has to deal with like bombings in her school. And she has to deal with like having to leave and be a refugee somewhere else. And it's just, it's super beautiful when you experience books that tell stories where we don't forget like the individuals in horrific situations. It's still somebody experiencing a horrible, horrible disaster, but because of like their age and where they are in life, they're still people. So yeah, she's dealing with a bombing and she's dealing with like an oppressive regime, but she's also a girl in love, a girl like looking for fashion and a girl trying to be stylish, and it's just, it's an amazing experience. The book I picked from New Zealand, um this I think is just like a free book you get on Kindle, but it has a fairly high rating and a lot of ratings. And like when I kept looking for books on from New Zealand, it kept showing up a lot. And it's, the synopsis doesn't give a lot away, so I'm not the most sure what it's about, but it seems like people are saying it's good, and I jumped on the bandwagon. The book from Spain that I'm adding to my list is The Time in Between. I added it, one, because the girl on the cover looks like a baddie. Like, it's such a beautiful cover. The synopsis is that a girl is suddenly left abandoned and penniless in Morocco by her lover. So she forges a new identity. Against all odds, she becomes the most sought after couture designer for the socialist wives of German Nazi officers. But she is soon embroiled in dangerous political conspiracy as she passes information from the British Secret Service through a code stitched to the hem of her dresses. So she's like, she's a couture designer, but she's also a spy for the British working to overthrow the German Nazi regime. And she a baddie. Like, come on, you know I'm sad. And then the next book is a book from a country that I just learned about, but is already near and dear to my heart because they are World Cup heroes. They're goats. Can you guess the country? Can you guess? I'm trying to do like a drum roll. Drum roll. It's Cabo Verde. The book I chose is The Last Will and Testament of Senhor de Silva Ar- Arujo. Forgive me for butchering all these names. So basically, the plot is that because it's such a small, like, arpeggio, everyone on Cape Verde knows Senor de Silva. But when Senor de Silva dies, his will and testament is read aloud. In his will, Senor de Silva lives a memoir that is a touching web of elaborate self-deceptions. He desired so ardently to prosper, to be taken seriously, to join the exclusive Gerimo Country Club, and most of all, to be a good man. And yet, shady deals, twists of fate, and an illegitimate child, such is the lot of poor self-critical Senor de Silva. And it's just basically, I guess, you find out more about a man through his will after he dies. And it's apparently a tragic comedy about like a man's life, struggling with poverty, struggling to become what you want to be in the face of what you actually are. And I'm sad. The next book is from Uruguay, and it's The Truce. Let me read you the synopsis because I swear, like, I was picking banger books for this list. 49, with a kind face, no serious ailments, a good salary, and three moody children. Widowed accountant Martin Santamon is about to retire. He assumes he will take up gardening or guitar or whatever retired people do. What he least expects is to fall passionately in love with his shy young employee, Laura. As they embark upon an affair, happy and irresponsible, Martin begins to feel the weight of his quiet existence lift until out of nowhere, the joy is cut short. You know that I picked banger books when I had made this list. Okay, from Saudi Arabia, the book I'm adding to my TBR is Girls of Riyadh. Now, this book is super popular. One of the things with like picking books from like countries where the main language isn't English is that like you don't have as wide a selection because some of the most popular books have never been translated into English, or like it'll be hard for me to get my hands on like English copies of the books. So, Girls of Riyadh, it's a book that it was really like it had a lot of ratings and people said to read it, but it's not like super highly rated. And even in the reviews, people are like, okay, this book is something you should read, but not because it's like the most fun book. They said it's like they said it's honest in that it really captures the experience of the girl of Saudi women. And people were saying that like it was like originally banned in Saudi Arabia, but like it was super popular. And then people said that like even though the book sparked a lot of outrage, they knew people like the characters in this book. So it's that thing of like maybe it's not the most interesting book, but it's a very honest encapsulation or like depiction of Saudi women. So that's why people recommended it. That's why I'm adding it to my TBR. The next country is France, and I can proudly say that I've read two books from France. I've read Les Mis, which made me decide that I hate all classics. Yes, that was a very dramatic thing to do, but Les Mis is a very dramatic book. 40 pages of that book contain descriptions of a garden or a church or something. Like so many times he would just go on tangents about like describing stuff, describing the blade of grass, describing the furniture, describing the history of the people who built something. Like I don't need to know why the carpenter or the bricklayer chose the type of cement they chose to build like whatever magnificent French building you're talking about, mister. I don't care. So I'm not recommending Les Mis. The book I'm adding to my TBR is funny enough. A book I did start reading, loved, told my friends and my brother that, oh my God, this is so funny, and then DNF'd it. And that book is The Count of Monte Cristo. The book was super interesting. I got 16% into it, loved it. And then I got to the part where he was trapped in the prison. And it was like maybe who knows how many chapters where they just locked you in the prison. Like nothing interesting was happening. They weren't making any developments. They would dig into the prison, they would dig through the walls, they would be trapped there, they would use a spoon to dig, and you're like, yes, I get it, he's trapped in a prison, he's been in a prison for years. I don't need to physically feel like I'm spending years reading about him being in a prison, you know? So I stopped after he escaped the prison, and that's not a spoiler. It's like one of the major plots. He escapes from prison and like has his revenge against everyone that like unjustly conspired to keep him in prison. Because the Count of Monte Cristo is so popular around people that don't read classics, it's like super popular on TikTok right now. It makes me feel like if I kind of forgive it for those chapters where it made it feel like I spent years trapped in jail with the main character, I might enjoy the rest of it, which is why I'm adding it back to my CBR. And then from Norway, I've also read a book from it. I read The Wild Duck, and I've also read the book I am recommending that you read, A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. This book is amazing. I can't believe a man wrote it because it talks about sexism in the concept of marriage and in the way that like being a woman in Victorian era traps you because you get beautiful things, but you are also trapped in like a beautiful prison. And it was just like for a man to be able to pick up the nuances of sexism in situations that don't outrightly scream violence, I was sad. I wrote papers in high school about this book because it was that goated. So yeah, you should read A Doll's House. From Senegal, the book I chose is Zala, and let me read you the line that sold me on this book. A corrupt politician is cursed with impotence on the night of his third wedding after embezzling 100 tons of rice. A single sentence, and I'm sad because what's a better synopsis than that? Literally, name a better synopsis than that? I dare you. The next country is Iraq, and I've never read a book from Iraq. So the book I'm adding to my TBR is Frankenstein in Baghdad. This book I'm adding because like maybe 2-3 years ago it was super popular on TikTok, and booktubers I follow were all recommending it, and some of them were like booktubers where I knew we had similar tastes in books. So I was like, oh, maybe this is good. It's basically what the title suggests. A man in Baghdad like is a scavenger, and he puts together like he steals body parts to sew them together to make a new person, and then he has his own Frankenstein in Baghdad. The next country is Argentina. Messi! I'm sorry. If this is still about the FIFA World Cup, I was like, am I not mentioning enough athletes? Do you think I don't know ball? I know ball, and I know Argentina, and I know Messi. Like, do you know that line is like, do you like Messi? Like, is it like Messi?
메시 좋아하세요?
Don't worry, don't know. So yeah, the book I chose from Argentina is Tender is the Flesh. This is a book that people either love or hate, and I was like, I guess I'll see what I feel about it. And so the synopsis is that the line that had me sold is working at the local processing plant. Marcos is in the business of slaughtering humans, though no one calls them that anymore. Like, bro, it sounds banger. It's like his wife left him, his father is sinking into dementia, and Marcos tries not to think too hard about how he makes a living. After all, it happened so quickly. First, it was reported that an infectious virus has made all animal meat poisonous to humans. Then, governments initiated the transition. Now, eating human meat, special meat, is legal. Marcos tries to stick to numbers, consignments, and processing. Then one day, he's given a live specimen of the finest quality. Though he's aware that any form of personal contact is forbidden on pain of death, little by little, he starts to treat her like a human being. And soon, he becomes tortured by what's been lost and what might still be saved. It's like, and then the next country is Austria, and I chose The Post Office Girl. Basically, it's a book about this girl where she's like in a point in life where she's kind of bored. Her life isn't going anywhere. So then her rich aunt sends her a letter like, "Oh, come join me and my husband on like this rich fancy vacation." And she goes and she's super excited and she enjoys it. And then her aunt's like, "Okay, bye-bye." That's the end of the vacation. So she goes back to like poverty and boredom, and she's like, that was a pretty high to fall all the way down from. And so she was like, I guess, going through it, and she's consumed by like bitterness and disappointment. And then she meets a guy, a wounded but eloquent war veteran. The guy's name is Ferdinand. The line that's like kind of like anchoring me to this book is Christine and Ferdinand's lives spiral downwards before Ferdinand comes up with a plan which will either be their salvation or their doom. I'm sorry, but I did my big one when I made this list. Like, I did not come to play when I made this list. From Algeria, the book I chose is What the Day Owes the Night by Yasmina Khadra. And I chose this book because Yasmina Khadra wrote The Swallows of Kabul. And that is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. And so when I found out that he wrote a book set in Algeria and I was looking for books from Algeria, I was like, yes, I will give him another chance. So I actually don't even have like the synopsis of this book because I was just like, I'm not reading it for the plot. I'm reading it for the author. I'm reading it because my guy did a big one once and I'm trusting him. The next country I chose is Jordan, and the book I chose is The Bride of Aman. Let me read to you why I chose this book. The Bride of Aman, a huge and controversial bestseller when first published in Arabic, takes a sharp-eyed look at the intersecting lives of four women and one gay man in Jordan's historic capital, Amman, a city deeply imbued with the nation's traditions and taboos. And I was like, it's about to get real. You know what I mean? Like, you have people falling in love with people from different faiths. You have people dealing with homophobia and the pressure to fake like a heterosexual marriage. You have abusive fathers. You have basically everything that you need in a book. And I was like, I don't know how to say this, but I'm sad. The next country is Colombia, and the book I chose is Love in the Time of Cholera. Let me, like, I'm sorry, but like this book's all the books I chose, their plots were plotting. Let me read you a synopsis of Love in the Time of Cholera. In their youth, Florentino Ariza and Fermina Daza fall passionately in love. When Fermina eventually chooses to marry a wealthy, well-born doctor, Florentino is heartbroken. But he is a romantic. As he rises in his business career, he whiles away the years in 622 affairs. Yet, he reserves his heart for Fermina. That's a specific number, a specifically big number. Her husband dies at last, and Florentino purposefully attends the funeral. 50 years, 9 months, and 4 days after he first declared his love for Fermina, he will do it again. Like, if I wasn't scared that dropping this mic would like destroy my audio, I would drop the mic. Because tell me that was not a banger synopsis. Tell me that doesn't make you want to run and read it. For Portugal, for Ronaldo, the book I'm adding is Death with Interruptions. And this book is another book that personifies death. Death is a person in this book. Let me read you the line. Death with Interruption poses the question, what happens when the Grim Reaper decides that there will be no more death? Death sits in her chilly apartments, where she lives alone with a scythe and filing cabinets and contemplates her experiment. What if no one ever died again? What if she, Death, with the small d, becomes human and were to fall in love? What did I tell you about your girl? Your girl will always pick a love story. The next country I chose is Dr. Congo. And I have read a book from Congo before, and it is the Poisonwood Bible. I liked the book enough, but not enough to recommend it. So I added a book to my TBR for Congo, and that is Shut Up, You Are Pretty. And honestly, I chose it for the title. Because Shut Up, You Are Pretty as a title, what could be more iconic? Like, it has a plot, it has a synopsis, but honestly, let's just sit with that title. The next country is England, and surprise, surprise, I've read quite a number of books from England. I've read The Picture of Dorian Gray, I've read Boyfriend Material, I've read Dracula, and I'm going to recommend 2 books from England. The first is The Wager. I found The Wager enjoyable because these people were crash landed. Like, these people crash landed, were shipwrecked far away from civilization on a deserted island, right? Like, you would think they would just descend to like violence and anarchy, but because they were like subjects of the British Empire and like subjects to British like naval codes, they would always be terrified that like, yo, if we ever make it back to England, we will be like held liable for our actions here. And for me, it just blew my mind because like they had no way of knowing they would ever make it back to England. Like they didn't even know where in the world they were. So for like a man-made institution to have that much control over people's actions, people's thoughts, people's behaviors, it boggled my mind, especially because it's like a true story. And like it's like I feel like I don't know if I'm explaining it clearly, but imagine like you are like a British soldier and you crash land on a desert island, like you have no idea where you are on a map. Like you literally could be king and god and country all to yourself. And rather than just acting anyhow and acting out, you're like, yo, if I ever get back to England and they say that like they caught me acting bad, they will punish me. Like, are you like my mind was boggled by that concept. Like, how can man-made institutions have so much control over people's behaviors that even in the situation where it seems almost impossible that you will ever get back to England, you still act and are bound by the rules of the English Empire and the English Navy? That had my jaw on the floor. And then one of my favorite classics ever is The Painted Veil. It was written by a man. I did not know that because again, it talks about feminism and not just like feminism as a concept. Like there's nuances to feminism that you feel like you would think that people who have never experienced it don't understand. And this man just he fully understands. And also he talks about like, so there's this really rich pretty girl and like she's rich and she's pretty, so she spends like, so every time she's like introduced to society, she's like, yo, I'm too rich, I'm too pretty, I don't want to marry you, until like she kind of gets old and like becomes a spinster, and so now she has to like kind of desperately marry somebody that she's not at all attracted to because he's well to do and like her options are getting limited. So she marries him and he goes to like a British colony somewhere in Asia. It's one of those things where it's like just because a man is good to you doesn't mean you owe him your love. Like you can know a man is being like really bad to you and you're like, yeah, I was not in love with them, so like I wasn't expecting better from him. And it was just, it's so iconic. And then stuff about like her, like a family resenting their dad, but their dad resenting them back too. And you're just like, it's, oh my god, the nuances, the fact that patriarchy keeps everyone in jail, everyone's imprisoned by patriarchy. It's just, it's tea. I don't know how to explain it more than that, but it's so tea. You should read it. From Ghana, I have read books from Ghana. I've read His Only Wife and Ghana Must Go. I'm not recommending any of those books. I'm adding a book to my TBR, and that is Open Water. It's a romance. It's a romance. Let me read you the synopsis. Basically, two young people meet at a pub in southeast London. Both of them are black and British, and they're both trying to make their mark in a city that by turns celebrates and rejects them. Tentatively, tenderly, they fall in love. But two people who seem destined to be together can still be torn apart by fear and violence. Open Water asks what it means to be a person in a world that sees you only as a black body, to be vulnerable when you're only respected for strength, to find safety in love only to lose it. I don't know, like that line, to find safety in love only to lose it. I love that. The next book I have is from Panama, and honestly, there's one called Out of Office, which I chose mainly because it's a romance from Panama, and I was like, one of the things with most books is that if they're romances, I'm less likely to hate them because I'm here for cheesy stuff, and most of the times they don't have plots that make me sad or scared or angry. So I'm more likely to really like a book or be like indifferent to it than to hate it if it's a romance, unless there's obviously like really toxic stuff in it. So for me, romance is always a safe bet. That's why I chose Out of Office. For the next three countries, these are countries where I actually struggled to find a book to pick the first time around. And then I went around the second time and I found a book. And the first country is Haiti. The book I chose is Love, Anger, and Madness. It's a trilogy of novellas, and apparently it's a scathing response to the struggles of race, class, and sex that have ruled Haiti. It was suppressed upon its initial publication in 1968. So if you're also doing like a banned books challenge, this is a book for you. In Love, Claire is the eldest of three sisters who occupy a single house. Her dark skin and unmarried status make her a virtual servant to the rest of the family. Consumed by an intense passion for her brother-in-law, she finds redemption in a criminal act of rebellion. Okay, I did not see that going that direction. Okay. In Anger, a middle class family is ripped apart when a 20-year-old Rose is forced to. Okay. And in Madness, Renee, a young poet, finds himself trapped in a house for days without food, obsessed with the souls of the dead, dreading the invasion of the local military thugs, and steeling himself for one final act against authority. The novellas paint a shocking portrait of families and artists struggling to survive under Haiti's terrifying government restrictions that have turned society upside down, transforming neighbors into victims, spies, and enemies. I don't know why I thought Love, Anger, and Madness would be like a lighthearted comedy because the name does not suggest that. But yeah, no, it's about rebellion. That's my TBR pick for Haiti. For Paraguay, I picked I the Supreme. So I the Supreme is about a man who was elected the supreme dictator for life in Paraguay in 1814. It is grotesque, comic, and strangely moving. It is a profound mediation on the uses and abuses of power over men, over events, and over language itself. Finally, the last country on this list is Croatia, and the book I'm adding to my TBR is Farewell Cowboy. So so again, let me read you the synopsis of this book. Dada's life is at a standstill. She's sleeping with a married man, working a dead end job, and even the parties have started to feel exhausting. So when her sister calls her back home to help with their aging mother, she doesn't hesitate to leave the city behind. But she arrives to find her mother hoarding pills, her sister chain smoking, her long dead father's shoes still lined up on the steps, and the cowboy poster of her younger brother, Daniel, who threw himself under a train 4 years ago, still on the walls. Hoping to free her family from the grip of the past, Dada vows to unravel the mystery of Daniel's final death, of Daniel's final days. Hi, this is editor Annie. So, forgive my appearance. I look crusty dusty, it's okay. I had originally chosen a book for Uzbekistan, but I changed my mind and chose a different book to add to my TBR. And that book is The Devil's Dance. So this book was written by an author who apparently was banned from Uzbekistan for like 26 years. And it's about a man that's like unjustly arrested and thrown into prison. So like to pass time and like kind of cope with the torture he's experiencing in prison, he tries to like mentally reconstruct a novel he was writing at the time of his arrest. The novel he was writing was about an Uzbek queen who who married like three sultans back to back and was basically constantly dealing with the threat of like execution, just at like the same way the author is currently dealing with the threat of execution while being in prison. Apparently, it's a story about resistance and surviving an unjust regime. And yeah, that's what I'm adding to my TVR. Okay, bye bye. Back to the real me again. Okay, so those are the countries, those are the books. I'm happy to say that from the 48 countries, I have read books from 17. So I have been reading a bit around the world. How many countries have you read a book from out of the 48 in the World Cup? And who do you think will win the World Cup? I'm low-key rooting for France. I just, in my mind, I still replay the 2022 World Cup final where Mbappe dragged Argentina to a standstill. He like literally from the jaws of defeat. Like he pulled France from the jaws of defeat and dragged Argentina to a standstill. I still remember him like crying and even like I want him to win a second time. I want him to win because he's always such an iconic World Cup player. But yeah. And which of these books are you adding to your CBR? I'm gonna go. I've been here for a while and people are looking at me. Bye bye.